This tutorial we're going to cover inventory and staging on a purchase order. And we're going to do that as though you received some material on a purchase order. You want to mark the items as being received and also set a staging location or anything like that. So we're going to do that as though we're going into the shipping and receiving department, clicking on this button right here. And when the form opens, we're going to go to the receiving tab, which is for purchase orders. Of course, shipping is for sales orders. And you can do different, you can look at these different ways. You can pull up a vendor, let's say like Yale, and get vendor POs. It'll bring up a whole list of all the Yale POs. And this will be the PO number, the customer, of course, is Yale, and the ship to, whether it's can't ship to your place or ship to a job site, and then also the job name, who the parts were for. This will tell you the quantity ordered, how many have been received, previous received, and the balance to ship. Now this is the total, sum total of all the items on the PO. Not a particular item. So you could have 10 doors and 10 frames and it'll say 20 because there's 20 items. Once you see the order you're looking for, just double click it and it'll open up. I'm looking for a particular one, so let me see if I can find it real quick. So we'll come under here. Actually, the one I'm looking for came from a door schedule, and this schedule here. So I'm looking for 74886. Looking for this PO number here, which looks like it's for Hager. So let's put in 74886. Now you can also search by ship to and who the part's for, like right here. Okay, so as you know, under ship and receiving, the form is grayed out to limit changes for shipping and receiving departments, except for things like printing and things like that. We come under product information. Looks like all we have on here are hinges. It's probably not the best example. Let me go ahead and I'm going to add some items to this PO. And no, we're going to go ahead and leave it like this. All right, so we're going to come under the inventory and staging tab right here. Now, when it first opens up, you see that there are no parts listed here. That's because it's box is checked to show received parts only. So since none of them have been received yet, which you can do on this tab by filling in this column right here and then saving it, but we're going to come under the inventory and staging tab and take care of it here. So I'm going to uncheck this button, and that will then pull in all the items, whether they have been received or not. So this is broken down. You have a part type, inventory part. It could be non-inventory part, which is a non-inventory part is something that you can physically put on a shelf somewhere, but you don't normally count it in inventory. An example of that would be on frames. If you could have three-sided frames where the three-sided frame is 3070 5 3/4 right hand, but then that's made up of components. Well, the frame itself would be marked as non-inventory because once you bundled it together, you could put it on a shelf and you could stage it. But the components are the parts that would be counted in inventory. And that can be changed if necessary. That's under administration, where if you typically order your frames as three-sided frames, bundled already, You can change that. That way you know how many 3070 right hand 5 3/4 frames you have in stock, how many left hands. But the way Portal Pro is set up right now, all that's counted through the components. That's what's counted in inventory. Now, if you do set up where you can count full frames, even though they have components as a full item, you'll still be able to order those components. So they're not taken away or anything. Okay, so but typically when an order goes to a purchase order, all it sends, if you're using components, all it does is send the components anyway. It probably won't even send the three-sided frame. All right, so what we're going to do is we have this purchase order. Maybe a shipment came in, so we need to come in here and mark the location, staging location, if we're going to stage it. Or we just want to mark how many have been received. So we have a couple different options here. Now, I'm going to go down this checklist here first. Now, one thing you'll notice on this grid, I can't resize these columns. They're fixed. That's the width they're at. But I've got a checkbox here. If for any reason you want to resize these columns, just check that box. And now you can see I'll get the double arrows where I can move. If I move my mouse right over that line, I can hold the left mouse button down and drag it and make these fields as wide as I need. I could even close down some fields if necessary. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll just leave it unchecked. Now, to go over to the columns, you have the part type I was explaining just a minute ago, inventory part, non-inventory part. One thing you will not see on here, if you ordered a frame, let's say welded, and there's a welding charge that you sent on this purchase order to have the, let's say Seco, Curry's, or whoever, weld the frame for you, that welding charge will not show up here because that's listed as a service. That's not something you can stage or put on a shelf somewhere. So things like that will not be included on this form. Okay, so next you have the category, in this case hinges, pivots, etc. Then the part number, the manufacturer. You have the quantity ordered. Now you notice some columns here marked in blue. The blue columns are the columns that can be edited, where you need to enter data, like quantity received, inventory, building, row, section, and shelf. Excuse me. But this one's already been filled in, so there's nothing that needs to be changed on these. This inventory location is the permanent location for your inventory for this item. That's where you should always put it when it comes in on a PO. Unless you're staging it, you have the option to stage it somewhere for whatever reason. Maybe it's for a particular job. And you're going to, as the items come in, you want to stage it in a particular location. And that data will then pull over into a sales order where you can show the PO data and it'll show where it's located. And then you can use the same location for the order, sales order staging location. So that's covered in another tutorial for sales orders. All right, so again, we've got the quantity stage and the staging building, row, section, and shelf. So these are the fields that should be filled in if we're going to stage them. If not, leave it blank. Maybe you're putting them directly into inventory. So the only thing you're interested in is this previous received. Now, the next column over here is PO note. You notice this is a lot of tag numbers. This purchase order came from that door schedule, and the door schedule included the tag numbers for each item. And one thing I want to point out here is this tag number. This is a tagged 1, then it's parentheses 3, close parentheses. And what that 3 is the quantity. This can come in handy when you're tagging and marking the boxes for the tag number, and you need to know how many for that tag number that you have to include. So if this was, say an 8.0 door, it would have a number 4 in there. And if we scroll down a little bit, another example, this 11, that's a pair of doors. So there's 6 hinges. So Portal Pro will do this for you automatically. If you're manually entering a PO, then if you're typing those tag numbers in here, that might be a way you want to keep in mind that you can do those tag numbers. Let me just double click this. Okay, I just remembered I can't edit this, so even though I'm double clicking on it to open it up, because I went through shipping and receiving, that feature is disabled. So that prevents any changes from this data. So a salesperson or somebody with the rights would have to come in here if anything changes had to be made. But we'll just pull this over and you can see the tags are entered the same way. 1, 3, so tag 1 gets 3. Let's come back over to this schedule here. If we come down, you can see for these stops, the tag number does not have the parentheses. That's because there's only one. So it only does that if there's more than one. Here's that tag 11, so it's getting 2 stops. Otherwise, it's 1. Okay. Let's see, what else? Okay, so instead of entering the received information here, which I could do, if I got 54 in, I could type 54 here, or if this was a big PO, I could check this box and it would automatically copy the quantity over into the received column, and then I could save it. But we're going to do this under inventory and staging. So we've already unchecked it to show all the items, even if they have not been received yet. And let's go over a couple of these other checkboxes. You have one here that says set received quantity equal to order quantity. So I can set this received quantity here equal to this quantity just by clicking this button. Now, it won't do it yet because I haven't selected anything. So I'll say OK. So I can either check this box right here, or I can check if there's a lot of items and we got everything in. I could go ahead and check this box. It would go down the list and check everything for me. Now, you could do that if, let's say this is a large order. I had a bunch of locks and closers on it, but maybe only 48 of those hinges came in. But everything else came in. I could go ahead and do this, and then once it went down and copied all this data over, let me go ahead and check the box. Is that received quantity equal to order quantity? Here we go. You can see now they're equal. I could do that for all these items, but then I could come back up here. Let's say there was only 48 of this one item, and I could type 48. That would save me the time of going down, doing each one individually, and things like that. Now, another thing I can do is, let me just uncheck that for a minute. I have an area here where I can do update inventory only and the received quantity. I can update staging only with staging quantities and the location. And we're going to look at these first. If I just want to put in the inventory location, maybe this hasn't been done yet, you can do this as you go until eventually, because this is your permanent location. That's the location where you want to store these products almost all the time. Like for inventory or your in-stock items. So this will be the location where anyone would know where to go to find these items. So I can set these locations. If this was a purchase order that did not have everything filled in for inventory, I could do it on this form here. You have another option though for inventory, and that is to come under this inventory control. You can set inventory location for every manufacturer, everything that's in your database, or in your warehouse even. You can set this inventory location along with some other things. So we're not going to cover this. That's covered under another tutorial. But keep that in mind. If you can also enter how much you have in stock at this given time. So next time you do inventory, use that form. Okay, so what I can do is I can go ahead and type this information in. Say building 2. Now, if you only have one building, you can leave this blank. That's there only if you have multiple buildings and you need to know which building this material is stored in. But if you only have one, don't even worry about filling that in. You can leave it blank. All right, so then we have a row, maybe row 5, and then section. I'm going to use letters. Now, anytime I use a letter, I'll turn my caps lock key on my keyboard so that every time I type, it automatically types in capital letters. I do this, but now when I go back to typing regular, like if I'm going to type notes in here, I turn my caps key off. The reason is when you're typing, it can get confusing on one particular letter especially. That's a capital O and the letter or the number 0. You can't tell the difference between the two. So just to eliminate confusion, I typically leave caps lock off. Now you can do it any way you want. I know some companies, some people prefer everything to be in caps. That's fine. Go ahead and put it all in caps. But for when I'm entering this data in these fields and I'm using letters, I do prefer caps because they're easier to read than the small case. Okay, now shelf, we'll use a number again. Let's say shelf 1. For large items like doors, maybe you could have 2 shelves full of the same door, 3070 flush left hand. That might be on 2 shelves. Well, you can put 1, 2. So you can use something like that in these fields. And that way, when you're setting your inventory, you'll know that this is where those items are going to be found, and it could be on the first or the second shelf. Okay, so if I were to click this now, it's going to tell me no parts were selected. So I either have to check this box, or there's another way I'll show you in a second. So let's just check this. And I could update that same location to multiple items on this list. Reason why I might want to do that with inventory, because typically inventory, everything is in a different location. They're not all in the same spot. But what I could do is I could leave shelf empty, and even section if I had to, and click. And let's say I have 10 rows of items on here. I know those 10 items are in building 2 and row 5. Everyone on here will at least be that. I can click update inventory, and it'll update everything with 2 and 5. And then I can come into the grid if I want, if they're all different, and I can just start typing for section A, B, and on down the list. Now that's one way. Now, keep one thing in mind. Even though I put data into this grid like this, it's not really saved. So to save it, I have to come down here and click on this Save PO button. But I'll show you what happens. Even doing something like changing tabs, you can lose any data that you've entered. So be very careful when you're working with this that you don't lose data. So if I click on product information, do you want to continue without saving? I'll just say yes. We'll go back to inventory. So you can see it reverted back to what it was. So nothing was saved. So keep that in mind. Now, if I want to enter the received quantity, we already have the inventory location. Another way I can do this is any item that's in this list is double click anywhere in this row. Doesn't matter where you click, just anywhere in the row. So you can see it opens up here with the quantity ordered, the part number. Now I've got access to the received column. It's not grayed out. Previous received, you can't change that. It's always going to be grayed out, but it would show a value if anything has been previous received. And I can make any changes to this inventory location if necessary. Now it also would fill in the staging information if there was anything here, but since it's all blank, this is blank. It also pulled in the purchase order note for me here. So let's say instead of 54, maybe I only received, say 51, let's say 48. So there's 2 doors that will not have enough hinges. So what I can do is I can make a note. You can do it one of 2 ways. You can take this, highlight it, do Control-C on your keyboard, click in here and do Control-V and paste all that in, and then remove the 2 doors that don't have hinges for a total of 6. But an easier way, since most of them came in, you might want to type something like, see, that's where I need to turn my caps lock back off. Or if you want all caps, it would be left on. Missing tag 1, 14. And I'm not going to bother putting the quantities in. I just need to know that I'm missing tags 1 and 14. So that's 6 hinges. So 48 plus 6 would be 54. So now I can, actually I take that back. All I'm going to do is update update inventory only. So that would only be these fields. It's not going to do anything with this. That's this button over here. We'll get to it in a second. So let me just go ahead and we'll click that. So you can see it added the quantity received here. None of this changed, so it stayed the same. Now you can update inventory locations. I could double click this item. Maybe instead of shelf 2, we've moved everything over to shelf 4. I can click update. You can see it updated that shelf location. Now I can come down here and save this. When I save it, that's going to be saved to my database as a permanent location. So anytime another sales order or purchase order pulls this item up, it's going to pull in the same location because that's where it's normally always put. Now staging is a different story. Of course, staging is particular to this purchase order only, or if it was a sales order, it would be specific to that sales order. I could do the same thing. I can either double click this row and then enter the staging information, click update staging, and it would put the data in here for me. Just by if I check this box, you can see I can't enter the staged quantity at this time because I haven't. The only way I can do that is by double clicking this row and getting it to open up here, because the stage quantity is specific to the quantity ordered. So you don't want to put the same stage quantity in for every item. So if I had more than one item in here, I could select all, and the only thing that would be updated would be all this staging information. So maybe the staging information is going to be building 1, row 5, section F, shelf 1. So I could select all, because typically when you stage something, they could be all staged in the same location. It's inventory that's going to vary. So once we have checked everything, I can do update staging only. You can see it put in the staging information. Now I have quite a few options here. If I want to do the quantity stage, I could just go in here and just type in. Of course, I'd only want to put quantity received because that's all there is to be saved or staged. And I can type the quantities in. The other option is to double click this row. When it comes up here, then I can type in the staged amount here, which is copied up here, and click update staging only. Works the same way. So there's several different ways you can work with this form. Now over here, this you have a receiving note. Now, and this is where I might want to put a note. Let's go ahead and we'll update staging information. Now you notice that it left the information in here in case I wanted to reuse it again for another item. So, I mean, that's okay. You don't have to... Okay, so over here you've got a couple more buttons. You can update received notes only. And if we pull this over, you can see there's the PO note and here's the receiving note column. So this is a column that's in blue that we can update. So I could type in a note here like this, and I could click update received note only. Okay, again, I have to select something. And there, put my note in. Let's go ahead and go back. The other option would be I can update inventory, staging, and note all at the same time. But the only way to do that is by double-clicking a row. So I double-click it. When you're using this button here, this is the only way you can use this button. It won't do anything if you try to select fields over here. It won't do anything at all. Because this staging and receiving is specific to this part item only. So when you're updating all these fields, that's the only way you can do it. So I could put received 48, staged 48, and then put my note in here, 1, 14. And now we'll update it. So there's my data. I've updated the form. Now this is a warning message when you try to change tabs to remind you haven't saved anything and you want to continue without saving. If you say yes, then you're going to lose any data that's put in here. If you say no, then it's going to stay on this tab until you save your changes. I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Now, come back over here to inventory and staging. You have a couple more check boxes over here. Set received quantity to order quantity. So by checking this box, it's going to set this ordered quantity over here to the received quantity. And I could do if this was a large purchase order, all I have to do is check this box. It will automatically check every item in here. And now I can check this box. And you can see it copy that over for me. I'll say OK. And it automatically unchecks that box. I can also set the staging quantity to the received quantity. That would be this column right here. We'll go ahead and leave that checked. We'll set staging quantity to received quantity.
So it copied this value over to here. And that would do it for every item in this list. So these are some way to kind of speed up the process instead of trying to type, especially on a large purchase order, type the quantities in here for each line item. And one more option you have is you can set the staging location equal to the inventory location. You might do that if these items, when they come in, they're just going to be put into the inventory location automatically. Maybe it is for a job like this job here, but maybe it's not going to ship out for a month or whatever the reason might be. But what you can do with this is copy this staging location information into these 4 locations here. So we'll go ahead and check the box. I'm going to make sure we have. Now you could do it for every item if you select everything. We'll check the box. You can see it copy this data over into the staging location fields. Okay. Now this receiving note, you can type. This can be used for anything. If there's another note that you want to put in. And you want to use it for multiple items, you could type your receiving note in here, check the ones that you want to update, and click this button, then it'll add that receiving note to each one of those items checked. Now, if you do notice a discrepancy between something, maybe maybe the order came in and there was a shortage, but nothing was shown as being back ordered. What you could do is this little notes thing up here. I'll say yes. You could send a message to the salesperson who wrote this, which in this case is Greg H. There could be another person logged in, but Greg H. is the person who authored this purchase order. So now I can send a message, check that box, come down and find Greg, will check that. Whatever I might want to say, so I'm just going to put that in there as this is my message. And if I click Save Note, it saved the note. So here you can see the note was saved. And the other person, if they want to reply back to you, you'll get a notification on your end under this area right here that they've responded back to you. Okay, so I think we covered you can update the received note only, and you could do that for multiple fields. You could do it for every field if you wanted. But this button here, you have to double click the line to get it to open up here. And this is the only way you can really use this button. And I think I already covered that. So let's move over to the printing the invoice and staging form. We have only one item. And you can see it pulls in the part number, the manufacturer, the category, and the job name. This will be the PO note column, and here's the receiving note. If there's anything to mention about, or if there was a note entered right here for that. So you could print this out if it was a long list. Take it out put it on a clipboard, take it out to the warehouse, and start filling in the either inventory or staging locations, quantity staged, whatever, even received. And you could bring this printed copy back into the office and then come into the form and just start filling in the fields that you filled in out in the warehouse. That should pretty well cover it. I don't see anything else that I'm missing, but so this pretty straightforward and some different ways you can work with it. So if you have any questions or concerns on this, please call our office or email, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. Thanks.